What if everything you were taught to believe in, whether it's education, faith, or ancient prophecy, turned out to be a trap? Welcome back to Nwomafie. Today we are breaking down a breathtaking African literary classic, Ngũgĩ, Thiong'o's debut masterpiece, Weep Not Child. So a lot of people treat this simply as a historical textbook about colonial Kenya and the Mau Mau Uprising. But if you read closely, you realize Ngũgĩ is actually doing something much deeper. He is giving us a tragic look at how different characters face different illusions of salvation and how a brutal colonial system crushes them all. At the heart of this tragedy is a young boy, a brilliant girl, and a love story that gets completely torn apart by war. So today we are going to trace this narrative step by step from the very beginning to its heartbreaking end. We will look at the vital lessons any reader might miss and a stunning role reversal at the end that changes everything. So let's get straight into the rages of Kenya. Right, so this story opens up in a harmonious but impoverished polygamous household in central Kenya. We meet our main character by name Njoroge. His mother pushes him to school, making him the very first in his family to get education. Njoroge isn't just competing with his peers. His closest friend and chief academic rival is a girl named Nwomafie. Now, Nwomafie's background is completely different from Njoroge's. Her father, Jacobo, is a wealthy African landowner who got rich by collaborating with the white settlers. On the other side, Njoroge's father, Ngoto, is a completely broken man. He doesn't own land anymore. He works as a mere laborer on a massive farm owned by a ruthless white settler named Mr. Howlands. But here is the twist. The exact farm used to belong to Ngoto's ancestors. Ngoto holds on to an ancient tribal prophecy that promises the black people of Kenya will one day get their land back, so he chooses to wait patiently. Can you imagine? How? By his son, Njoroge finds his own prophecy in Western books. He genuinely believes that if he can just get education, he will single-handedly rescue his family, beat the system, and unite his country. From day one, Njoroge and Nwomafie share a deep bond, walking to school together and navigating the growing divide between their fathers' social classes. So, as the children grows, the political landscape back home starts catching fire, right? Ngoto's oldest living son, Boro, returns home from fighting for the British in World War II. Boro is deeply traumatized just because he watched his older brother die in that war. A war fought for a white empire that stole their ancestral land. Boro looks at his father's patience and feels absolute disgust. He rejects prophecies, he rejects Njoroge's books, and he heads into the forest to join the Mau Mau freedom fighters. Howlands also lost his eldest son, Peter, in the World War II. That loss made him a cold, bitter man who poured his entire soul into dominating his Kenyan plantation. Then comes the critical turning point in chapter 13. Njoroge and Nwomafie take their major competitive exams. Njoroge passes with flying colors, scoring high enough to get into Syriana, a prestigious missionary high school. Nwomafie also passes, but because her scores aren't higher as Njoroge's, she is channeled into a local teacher training school. For a brief second, Njoroge's family feels an intense glimmer of hope. Njoroge enters Syriana Secondary School, which feels like a little paradise of racial harmony. But this is Ngũgĩ's brutal use of dramatic irony. While Njoroge is safe in his high school bubble, a massive workers' strike erupts at home. Ngũgĩ joins it, stands up to the collaborator Jacobo, and is violently beaten. The colonial government declares a state of emergency. Security forces start executing innocent people, including Njoroge's old schoolmaster, Isaka. The illusion of safety is completely obliterated. So, the violence inevitably tracks Njoroge down. In retaliation for colonial oppression, Boro and the Mau Mau assassinate Chief Jacobo, who is Nwomafie's father. Because Njoroge's family is heavily suspected, the colonial police march straight into Syriana High School, drag Njoroge out of his classroom, and throw him into a detention camp. The boy who worshipped books is suddenly touched with horrific brutality by Mr. Hollands himself, who now demands to know where Boro is. To protect his other son Kamal from being executed for Jacobo's murder, the proud patriarch Ngũgĩ steps forward and falsely confesses to the crime. Hollands is so enraged that he brutally tortures and castrates Ngũgĩ. When Njoroge is finally released from detention camp, he returns to a house of horrors. His father dies right in front of him from his horrific injuries. Kamal too is sentenced to life in prison, and Corey, who is an older brother of Njoroge, also is locked away in a detention camp. To top it all off, Boro assassinates Mr. Hollands in a final act of revenge, only to be captured and sentenced to hang. Now, Njoroge's world is completely shattered. His education is gone, his family is destroyed, and he is forced to take a humiliating job at an Indian shop, from which he is quickly fired. So this brings us to the emotional climax that completely defines Njoroge's fate. Utterly destitute and broken, Njoroge realizes he has nothing left in this world except his childhood love, Nwomafie. Nwomafie is currently home on a school break from her teacher training school. Njoroge tracks her down, confesses his love, and begs her to run away with him to Uganda so that they can escape the blood and the ghosts of Kenya. But Nwomafie refuses. And guys, this is the most brilliant tragic role reversal in the whole book. Earlier in the novel, Nwomafie was the one who was terrified, crying that Kenya had grown too dark. But then Njoroge was her anchor, giving her hope, telling her the sun would rise tomorrow. But now everything has flipped. Njoroge has lost his mind and his faith. Nwomafie, even though her father was killed by Njoroge's brother, has actually internalized Njoroge's old lessons of hope and resilience. She tells him she cannot abandon her mourning mother, and that despite the horror, she must stay and fulfill her duty to Kenya. This rejection is the absolute final blow. The girl who used to look to him for hope is now the one holding the hope, and she is leaving him behind to go back to school. Completely isolated and feeling like an utter failure, Njoroge walks out into the dark night with a piece of cord. He loops it over a tree branch ready to hang himself. But just as he is about to end his life, his two mothers, Nyokabi and Injeri, call out his name in the dark, searching for him. He lets go of the news and goes home with them, alive, but completely emptied of his youthful dreams and also haunted by a voice inside calling him a coward. Now, if you think this story, right, is a tragic fiction made up for entertainment, let me tell you something that will completely change how you view this book. Weep Not Child is heavily autobiographical. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o didn't just write the story, he actually lived it. Just like Njoroge, Ngũgĩ was a brilliant boy from a large polygamous household who left his village to attend an elite missionary high school. And just like Njoroge, every time Ngũgĩ came home for school holidays, he found his world on fire. His real father was stripped of his land by colonialists. His real older brother ran into the forest to join the Mau Mau fighters and was killed. His real mother was arrested and brutally tortured by the British forces, and his deaf brother was shot dead by soldiers who claimed he didn't follow orders. So when you read Njoroge's deep shame and despair at the end of this book, you are actually looking at Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o processing his own survivor's guilt. He was the chosen son who got to sit safely in a classroom reading books while his mother bled and his brothers died in the trenches. So, what are the ultimate lessons of Weep Not Child? First, the very hope Njoroge planted in Nwomafie is what ultimately saves her, but her survival leaves him utterly broken. It shows that while systems can crush an individual, the ideas we pass to one another can actually survive the fire. Also, naive hope without political awareness is dangerous. Njoroge thought education was a magic wand, but Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o shows us that a corrupt system does not care how many books you have read. If the underlying structure of the land and power isn't fixed, your degrees cannot protect you from the storm. So, what do you think about this book? Kindly share your thoughts, your questions in the comment section. Hit the subscribe button, share this video to a friend. And what I really want you to do is I don't want you to stop at this summary video. I actually want you to get this book from a local bookshop and read how beautifully Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o tells his own story. I am Kwame and I'm from Nwomafie. Thank you for having me.